everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new, my name is Sarah, and today I am going to be sharing with you 4 breakfast recipes that we have eaten recently. Most of the time we actually do these kinds of meals for dinner, so if you notice that it seems like it's more like dinner time instead of breakfast, that is why. My husband isn't home to eat breakfast with us, and so it's just better to do an actual cooked meal for actual cooked breakfast meal for dinner so that we can all eat together. And I have a lot going on in my house right now, so if you hear some background noises, I'm sorry. I've got the Instant Pot making some rice. I'm preheating the oven so I can have some lunch, and I have the washer going in the background, so hopefully it's not too loud. But okay, getting started, I am making some homemade blueberry muffins. I used to buy the mix that's less than $1 until I realized how much sugar was in them. And so I was trying to find an alternative recipe that was maybe a little bit healthier. And so I found this one, and it still had quite a bit of sugar in it, but I used sweetener instead, monk fruit sweetener instead of sugar. We didn't love this recipe. We didn't hate it, but we didn't love it. So to get started, you've seen me mixing the dry ingredients, and I will leave this recipe linked down in the description box if you're interested in making it. It made quite a bit. So you start with mixing your dry ingredients in a bowl: flour, sugar, baking powder, cinnamon, and I can't remember off the top of my head what all was in there, but again, I'll leave the description or the recipe linked down in the description. And then in a mixer, you want to whisk together your wet ingredients, and this recipe does use buttermilk. And so I whisked the wet ingredients, and then I changed out the attachment to be the paddle so that I could mix the dough. So then you add your dry to your wet like you would most baking recipes. This dough is very, very thick, and it says in the recipe that it should be thick, so I wasn't very concerned, but it is thick. It's hard to work with. And then once I mixed the wet and dry together and it was all mixed thoroughly, I took it off of the mixer, and then I used a spoon to mix in blueberries. What inspired this recipe in the first place was that I had this bag of frozen blueberries in my freezer that have been in there for quite a while, and I needed to use some of them, and I didn't know what to do with them. Muffins sounded good, and so that is how I started searching for a recipe. It didn't use all the blueberries, but it did use quite a few, so I was glad to get some of them out of my freezer at least. My son really liked these. My husband and I thought they were okay. They weren't very sweet. So it has quite a bit of sweetener in it, but they weren't very sweet. But we both agree that it's probably just because we're used to the overly sweet muffins that you get when you do like the muffin mix, or when you buy already made muffins at the store. There's probably just a lot more sugar in those, and that's what we're used to. mixed in. I put them in my muffin liners. These are silicone muffin liners. They are the jumbo size, and I probably didn't need to spray them, but with how thick the batter was, I didn't want them sticking. So I also sprayed I'm using a large cookie dough scoop, which seemed to work pretty well. It made 11, yeah, because I could have made 12, but the 12th one would have been kind of small, so it made 11 muffins. And so I am just filling in the muffin liner, and then later I go and just kind of like scrape the extra dough out of the bowl as well, and then throw them in the oven. This is what they looked like when they were done. They smelled fantastic, and they might be better with just a little more sugar. Let me know if you give this recipe a try. The next breakfast recipe we had was biscuits and gravy. I don't have a recipe to link for this because I don't use a recipe, but I will write out in the description down below kind of how I make it. So I am just using some pork sausage. I prefer to get actual breakfast sausage, but I had gone to Aldi this week and this is all they had, so I made it work. So I'm just going to brown that sausage up and crumble it, make sure it's crumbled up really well. And then I add in a little bit of maple syrup. You could also buy maple sausage if you want, but I think that's a little too sweet. So I just put a little bit, maybe like a tablespoon, couple teaspoons, something like that in there, and mix it around. And then I coat the sausage with flour. I would say I started with maybe 3 tablespoons, and you just want all of the moisture to be absorbed. Oh, and I did add salt and pepper, but you want the moisture to be absorbed, so the syrup and the like grease off of the sausage.
I had a feeling you'd come back and save me from all those lonely nights and heartbreaks, and I feel misplaced without you. Why don't we go back to, why don't we go back to, never wanted to end it like we did. I guess shit happens for a reason, but it's like something feels different from back then. Why don't we go back to, why don't we go back to, honestly I'm open wide. I don't feel like waking up without you by my side. I still see your silhouette. Why don't we go back to, why don't we go back to your bedroom?
let that cook for just a minute to get that raw flour taste out. And then I add whatever dairy I have on hand. So if I have half and half, if I have heavy whipping cream, milk, whatever we have is what I use. I had quite a bit of half and half and I didn't want it to be too thick. So I added in the half and half, cooked that up a little bit, and realized that it was still pretty thick. So I needed to thin it out a little bit. So I added in some milk. I just used whole milk because that's what we had in the fridge. And then just whisk that up, let it sit and warm up. And I just used frozen, already made biscuits that I cooked up in the oven. The next recipe is a crunchy French toast recipe. This is an adaptation off of a Pioneer Woman recipe. I will try to find her recipe online and link it down below for you. I've made that exact recipe before and we really liked it. And this night I was using it as inspiration, but I didn't have all of the same ingredients. So I just used what we have. So I am starting out by crushing up some Cinnamon Toast Crunch. The last time we made this, we used Captain Crunch, which was really good, but I preferred it this way. And so I just ground that really fine because you're going to coat your French toast in this. Her original recipe says to add in breadcrumbs with it as well, but we were out, so I just excluded that, and I thought it tastes just the same, it was still crunchy and everything. So then in another container that I'm going to dredge the bread with, I am mixing together some eggs and some heavy whipping cream. Again, if we only had half and half or milk at this time, then that's what I would use. But I had just gone to the store, so I used heavy whipping cream to give it more of a rich flavor. And then I added in some vanilla and some cinnamon and whisked that around really well. She does have measurements in her cookbook. I've made French toast enough that I can kind of figure out how much liquid and the ratios of everything I'm going to need. But if you need that recipe to follow, I will definitely link it for you. And I just whisk that together really well. And then I set up a dredging station next to the stove. So I have the wet mixture, that is the milk egg mixture, and then I have the cereal, which I added some melted butter to kind of make it wet so it would really stick to the French toast. And then it's just like you would make French toast. You dip your bread into the wet mixture and then you put it in the dry mixture. And then you put it onto your frying pan, and you want to make sure the frying pan is already hot, otherwise it's going to make your cereal soggy. Then you just want to fry that up on both sides like you would, and I did spray my pan too, I should mention. You just want to fry that up like you would normal French toast until it is crispy on both sides. I also made some bacon to go with this, so while the French toast was cooking, I was pulling the bacon out of the oven.
I got this picture in.
And then for my son, I did go ahead and cut it. I was going to do strips, but decided it'd probably be better to put into pieces. And then the other strips that were left, I actually sent with my husband for dinner, I guess, that night, because he did have to work this night. And then again, we had ours with bacon and some strawberries on the side. And you really didn't need much syrup because it was pretty sweet with the cereal. The last meal I'm sharing with you are these bacon, egg, and cheese roll-ups. And not every meal that I make, especially if I'm trying new meals, not every meal is a hit. And this one was not a hit. So I had originally found this recipe in an old cookbook that I got from my mom, who I think got from her mom. I don't know. It's like older than me. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, you don't cook the bacon? That's a little weird. So I looked online and tried to find something similar. And the few that I found, it wasn't exactly this kind of recipe, but all of them that were similar didn't cook the bacon. I didn't agree with that. So, okay, let's go in order here. So I'm starting with some eggs because you're going to make scrambled eggs. I did use 9 eggs, and I probably could have gotten away with like 6 or 7 eggs. I had too many. And then I just added in some milk and some salt and pepper and whisked that together.
I could talk to you for hours, and we stay up all night. And when morning came, we'd make breakfast in bed. I don't know why I threw away.
And then you take crescent dough. You could use crescent rolls if you want, but I chose to use the crescent dough sheets so that I could cut it up into strips, so it would be more of like a strip roll up instead of like a crescent roll is a triangle and it doesn't always hold everything in very well. And since you use scrambled eggs, I thought the crescent sheet would be better. So I just rolled that out and then used a pizza cutter to cut it into 6 strips. And then like I was saying about the bacon, it said not to cook it at all. And I didn't think that like there was any way it was actually going to cook. So I did put it in the pan for not very long, a few minutes, just to kind of start the cooking process on it. And I should have cooked it all the way. It cooked in the oven, but it didn't get crispy the way that we like it. So I should have cooked it a lot longer. But anyway, so I removed the kind of cooked bacon from the pan, took some of the extra grease out, and then I just made my eggs in a cast iron. I've heard people say you're not supposed to make eggs in a cast iron, but I've never had any issues. So I do. I just make sure that there is still plenty of grease in the bottom, but not too much that it's like gross. Not that your eggs are grossly covered in grease. And I make my eggs low and slow. So you want a low to medium heat, and then you just cook them slowly. And I use a spatula to constantly be moving them around the pan. Once they were done, I took the crescent sheet and kind of pressed it out. And then I have some of this nacho cheese sauce. You could also use shredded cheese if you want, but you just put a layer of that on your crescent. And then I put a strip of bacon. Again, I would cook it all the way, or I would use sausage for this too. That would be pretty good. And then you put some of your scrambled eggs on the top and you roll it up. After the first one, when I was pressing it out, I decided to get out my rolling pin and kind of roll it out just so it would be stretched a little better. And I think that worked out pretty well. I also could have filled these a little more with eggs. So then I just repeated that process with all 6 of them, put them on a greased cookie sheet and baked them. I started out with baking them for the time that it said on the crescent dough wrapper, but then I took them out and flipped them and added about 5 more minutes of cooking because the middle of the dough didn't seem like it was done. Also, at the last minute, I decided I wanted to make some hash browns, so we had a side of hash browns with it as well. And this is what they look like when they came out. I ended up taking the bacon out of mine. I didn't even eat it because it was so chewy, but the flavor of the crescent with the eggs was really good. So that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe before you go. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked seeing what we ate for breakfast these few nights. Let me know in the comments if you're gonna try anything out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.